what we have been looking for. Michael Gonzalez is here to talk to us about energy and the health conundrum. So, Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the influence of energy in health. As you know, most of the diseases, even degenerative disease or right now infectious disease, all have an energetic component. Energy is important. How to understand energy in order for us to be able to control all the diseases. Very known biologist Theodosius Dobzhansky said, "Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution and quantum physics." And as you know, failure in cellular energy, it's a common denominator in all chronic degenerative diseases. And we see problems in energy in infectious diseases also. This is very interesting because energy is defined as the capacity of a physical system to perform work. But when we talk about biological energy, it's a little bit more complicated because it refers to chemical potentials that are produced by a bunch of different reactions that take place in different compartments that we call metabolism. So we have movement of electrons, we have different frequencies, we have currents. So we have an array of different expressions of energy. And the old cultures always talk about vital energy, which is the energy that it's permeates environment, is in all things. And this is very interesting because if you have read a little bit about Tesla, he mentions that the environment is supposed to be full of energy, which he called ether. And that's very important when we're going to talk about a little bit about quantum physics in terms of how energy is recognized. Because if you remember, energy has a dual type of expression. You have it as waves and you have it as particles. And it's been a big issue in quantum physics that has, that has taken a lot of experimentation, the cuttings, the slits in the presentation of light, presenting it as a wave and also as particle. And how Tesla resolves this is that he says that since we're in an environment full of energy, that basically light will be a particle, but it makes throughout these ether, throughout these in different energy that it's in the environment, it creates waves. You remember, if you throw a rock in a river, in water in a river, it's going to present waves. So it's the same principle when you think about energy moving as a particle in an environment of energy, creating waves. So you have particle and waves at the same time. So it's very interesting that energy, when you think about waves or you think about particle, you're thinking about movement, vibration, frequencies. So there, in all the healing models that we could think about, we think about manipulating energy, how to bring energy to the system. Why is this energy so important? Because one of the things that you have to remember is that the body, it has a lot of systems and they're very complicated. And all of them require energy. But the main importance of energy would be to establish order, organization, compartmentalization, and communication. That's why energy becomes so important. And we have different forms of establishing these necessary characteristics for a system in order to function as complex and as complicated as we want to. So it's very important that we think of these different vibrations, different frequencies, particle waves as a dimensional transition. You have depending on the size of the system that we're thinking, we may have different perceptions of dimensional transition. What I mean with this, what I mean is basically that we have a limited perception sometimes of what we're talking about energy, because we have our different ways of interpreting energy. We have our eyes, we have our eyes, our ears, our touch. So we're limited by our own human limitations on how we perceive this energy. So we see the energy as the sun as a yellow light, but there are many different wavelengths that impact, that have different frequencies and different vibrations that impact different parts of cells. Maybe in photosynthesis, you know that it's certain wavelengths that impact, that are able to produce the oxygen and the carbohydrate in order to it produce its product. You know, the plant produce different products that we may be able to eat. And we, by the way, we produce the CO2 for the plants. So it's an exchange in the environment dependent on energy. Here I talk a little bit about the energy photon, which is the electromagnetic energy form. It's a bundle of particles or waves at certain frequency and cycles. Frequency is the number of waves that pass through a fixed point in a unit time. It's a cyclic pattern of scalar waves. It's a process that energy contracts toward a neutral point known as a vibration, and the process when energy expands away from the neutral point which is known as oscillation. So this is what determines these different number of waves passing to a point. It determines the vibration, the oscillation, and at that time, the frequency. So it's very important in creating the structures of matter, because they help organize matter, giving it its appearance and uniqueness. For this reason, frequency and vibration are very essential for life to exist. In addition to creating a potential, sometimes it's sort of like a battery potential. And you see that in different aspects in the body. You see it in the water, in the extracellular matrix. And that's very important. That's what Gerald Pollack has been talking about, the fourth stage of matter, or of existence, that it's like a gel-like, which really can work as a battery. So energy dimensions are dimensions of the different states of being. It defines space and time in four dimensions. The first dimension is a straight line. It's what we see and perceive with our senses. But as I mentioned to you, our senses are limited. So that's what we see in this dimension. And you know, one of the rules of quantum physics is that, number one, we talked about, it's the dual aspect of energy, being a particle and a wave. The other aspect is the uncertainty, because at that level, when things are so small, they're very difficult to measure, because when you try to measure at one point, they're not there anymore. So they're moving so fast that are very difficult to measure. So there's some sort of uncertainty in what you're measuring. You do experiments to know that they're there, but you don't know exactly where they are. And that's another important thing. The other important thing is the perception. A lot of the quantum physics, you determine as reality because you're able to observe it. So it's only real when you have the observer, looking at it. And this is catchy, but it's easy to understand, and I'll tell you how. Right now, I'm looking at my computer, but if you're behind my computer, you will not be able to see the slides that I see. And we are in the same dimension, we are in the same place, and we may be having the same senses, but it depends on the position of the observer, what you may be able to observe. So that's even being in the same, dimension, things in the same dimension. Another example of this is the radio waves. you know that the radio waves are there because you turn on the radio and the radio catches the waves and you'll be able to hear something. But we cannot see the radio waves. We're not capable of seeing it. So for us, they're only real when we are able to observe it with our senses, with our hearing. Before that, it doesn't exist for us because we cannot see it. So these are the catchy things that quantum physics make you think about. But I think the most important thing even, it's that you understand that depending on the size of the system, it depends the dimensional aspect of it. And so there are various things that are very important for this dimensional thing. And it's basically that it's a perception thing. So in quantum physics, reality is a perception. It's a perception depending on the limitations of our senses. It also tells you that time is also a perception. And we know that time, for example, if you get in a jet as a Concorde and you go around the earth real fast, you're gonna save you a couple of seconds compared to somebody who's not going that fast. So it's really a perception depending on velocity, depending on the speed. So these are many things that we are not able to really detect easily in the dimension that we are existing, but there are things that are really out there because it depends on the dimension that we are able to give the interpretation to, depending on the limitations of our senses. Another interesting thing is that you have an electric current flow perpendicular, then you have an electromagnetic field. So once you have a current and you have an electromagnetic field, the electron or the photons are able to behave different, which is called a quantum superposition. And it exists in all possible states and it surpasses dimension. Why it surpasses dimension? Because the electron can move so fast at the speed of light when it is in an electromagnetic field. So you have here a combination of electricity, but producing something that's really faster than what we will think as an electric current. It's something that goes faster, the electromagnetic field. That's I remember in one example that Albert Szent-Györgyi said. He said he was driving his motorcycle, and suddenly, like a fly, got into his eye, and he said that he could close his eye so fast, and it's probably because we think the nerve, in order to make this function, the nerve produces a current, and that current has to touch there secretes some chemical, which is neurotransmitter, to the other nerve in order to travel to the brain, and then the brain travel back to the eye so he's able to close it. And he said that occurs in a very fast manner, but it cannot occur as fast as I could close my eye when I feel something hitting my eye. So what Szent-Györgyi was thinking is that we have an alternate system to the nervous system, and it's created by the current of the nervous system creating this specifically electromagnetic field in which the electron can travel even faster. You know that bacteria and smaller living creatures do not have an established a complicated nervous system. They have a very basic one, which really it's very similar to what he was been describing of electricity, or having a current producing an electromagnetic field, and the electromagnetic field having the electron move in order to be very quick. So you see that even systems that are supposedly less advanced, we have different feelings and perceptions due to our complicated nervous system, but simple nervous systems, depending on electromagnetic field for communication, can be even faster although limited, but will be faster than what we normally see as a neural response. Another important thing to have in mind when we talk about energy is the laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred or converted from to another. And entropy is the disorder of the system. An open system can exchange both energy and matter with its surroundings. The system will tend to move toward the disordered configuration. So this is important because the only thing that we have to keep the necessary order for the complexity of our life, or the complexity of establishing a balance that we call the healthy state, is energy. The second law of thermodynamics says that the entropy of the universe is constantly increasing, because once you have movement, if you don't have order, organization, compartmentalization, you will not be able to have the necessary arrangement for this to be a system, you know, good communication that's needed for to maintain the necessary balance to have the healthy state. So the healthy state, being healthy, it's really a matter of having organized, ordered energy. So energy translates into motion, that overcoming resistance or affecting a physical change. We have the redox system, which is an electron movement. So energy can assume several forms. It could be thermal, electrical, mechanical, chemical, radiant, kinetic. So energy can be changed from one to another in several forms. The body transforms chemical energy derived from food to ATP, the energy currency of the cell, in the process called metabolism. Living organisms, as I mentioned before, are extremely complex. We need information, communication. It's of great importance in order to maintain the homeostasis necessary for life and necessary for health. Where there's life, there's information. So energy can be seen also as a source of information, like the different wavelengths that we have from even the light of the sun. So if everybody's thinking alike, then no one is thinking. Ben Franklin said that. And I think it's one of the important things that we may be able to think different. I think it's very important to think out of the box. There always, in different cultures, there have been talking about a vital force. Something that is not found in inanimate objects and that was necessary for life and control life processes. The idea became known as vitalism. And this gave rise to the concept of biological intelligence. And what is intelligence? It's the ability to process and utilize information. Biological intelligence is enhanced energy production by the mitochondria, which increases the ability to process, store, and utilize information. The flow of information is dependent on electrical fields that can take form in just about any type of molecule, ranging from electrons and protons to metal ions, neurotransmitters, hormones, proteins, energy molecules, RNA, and DNA. And this is a very important concept, this concept of biological energy. Why I mention this? Because many physicians do not recognize biological energy, but they don't have any problem talking about other types of intelligence, like artificial intelligence. And if you recognize artificial intelligence, and what is artificial intelligence? It's basically the capacity of a computer to organize, to organize or communicate. And it does it by a dual system, zeros and ones. And we are a lot more complicated than zeros and ones. So biological intelligence entails really the importance of the mitochondria and really having the ability for us to process, store, and utilize information in different forms. As I mentioned earlier, could be some very small molecules to really large ones. And this is what we're looking for: balance, homeostasis. I think this is the greatest symbol that I have seen in terms of, of, of life or health, because you see there's two components there that are contrary, but at the same time complementary, and they're in a constant movement. I think this is a very important symbol to really establish what health should be. And it's very hard to maintain a balance in the movement at the same time. So the only thing that could help with that, it's energy. So you have a concept of duality forming a whole. You have opposites that are complementary. And the nature of yin yang, it flows and changes with time. It's dynamic, harmonic, balanced movement. It's a perfect example of the principle of the healthy state. Mitochondria have been key in the evolution of complex life, as they enable the vast amounts of information to be stored and processed in a cell by supplying almost unlimited amounts of energy. Energy as an element to provide, as I mentioned before, order, organization, compartmentalizations, which are needed for communication. To attain the needed balance, harmony, and homostasis, organized energy produces a control force capable of attaining negative entropy. Without energy, there can be no memory, thus no awareness. So basically what we want with our energy is to have a negative entropy state. Why? Because a negative entropy state, it's a state of organization and order, what we need in order to have homeostasis. Order, it's an arrangement of the position of things in relation to each other according to a particular sequence, pattern, or method. Biological systems need to be self-organized, differentiated, and interact throughout various networks. So it's a very complicated system. So in order it to be effective, it needs order. All biological systems are formed by systems of various orders and are part of a suprasystem of a higher order or organization. Organization is, every cell in your body has its own internal organization. The cells are organized into tissues, the tissues into organs, and your entire body maintains a careful system of transport, exchange, and commerce. In other words, communication that keep us alive. In order to attain this balance, open channels of effective communication are a must. To sum up, the high degree of organization of living things is maintained by a constant input of energy, decrease in entropy by applying a controlled force of power. So that's the importance of the mitochondria. Order, organization, and compartmentalization. It's to divide into sections or categories. Remember the mailboxes. In the post office, most of the time have these huge mailboxes in order to, depending on the zip code, things goes to different areas of the country. So this organization is important for complex organisms to maintain their functions. And this is very important because in older days, everybody thought that the cell was a soup. And it took some time in the 70s from two scientists, Singer and Nicholson, provided the mosaic model, the cell membrane mosaic model and he mentioned that the membrane was a dual membrane, you know, of fats and basically a dual fat membrane and proteins. But he also described the organization of the component of the different organelles on the cell. And this is what really maintains the order. And it was a very organized system. It couldn't be another way. But in older days, everybody thought that the cell was a soup. So this compartmentalization allows the cells to perform incompatible chemical reactions simultaneously. It also increases the surface area of the cell membranes, which are necessary to obtain nutrients and excrete waste. Thus, compartmentalization means of increasing membrane area without increasing the size of the cell. So it helps keep the organization. It helps keep everything separated. And communication is important in exchanging information. Cellular communication via healthy membranes allow millions of cells to communicate and work together to perform important body processes that are necessary for survival. Both multicellular organisms heavily rely on cell-to-cell communication via transmembrane receptors, membrane-bound enzymes, membrane-bound pumps. Communication in biological system needs to be remarkably efficient, organized, and well coordinated. To destroy lines of communication is an effective war tactic. It increases entropy, disarrays order and organization, and induces chaos. So doesn't that remind you of disease? So communication is a manifestation of intelligence. Effective communication is a must to maintain organization. Energy and information are interconvertible. Information needs effective communication. Information without intelligence is without any value. So one question now, is the mitochondria intelligent? You bet. In addition to converting energy, mitochondria play a quite large part in determining a cell will die by ordinary death or by programmed cell death. So even that the mitochondria controls, it's very important. So the mitochondria releases chemical, cytochrome C, and this triggers programmed cell death. Mitochondria are very important energy converters. In this process, they produce waste products. Mitochondria, these waste products can be reactive oxygen species that may have a dual role. They may act as cell messengers and communication molecules, but they also, when unbalanced, have a detrimental role as free radicals. So what we see here is that the mitochondria, it's very important, but we have to give love to the mitochondria. And I'll talk a little bit about how we give love in order not to have the mitochondria produce too much free radicals that may damage the same mitochondria. Mitochondria, we inherit mitochondria from our mothers, basically. Because when the fertilization process goes on, most of the mitochondria in the sperm, it's in the tail, and the tail gets lost after the fertilization. So those early divisions occur in the when the fertilization goes on, occurs because of the glucose, the sugar in the ovum, in the egg. And then after a number of different divisions, it's that the mitochondria of the egg turn on, and then we have differentiation. So a loss of maintenance of the electrochemical transmembrane potential may damage the mitochondria. Alterations in function of the electron transport chain and reduction of the transport of critical metabolites into the mitochondria. These changes may result in reduced efficiency of oxidative phosphorylation, a reduction in production of ATP. So the mitochondria, it's very powerful, but at the same time, it's very sensitive. Here important is that we are beings of light, and the mitochondria can have information from the light. Light interacts with cell information, self-organization that may be achieved by various means: electronic, chemical, biomolecular, metabolic, neural. These systems may merge as a mobile energy relay system. Remember the key flow and how acupuncture can really help the energy flow. The key energy flow in our body, energy channels, meridians, which according to traditional Chinese medicine regulates our body functions, may be related to the organism biophoton field. So we are energy. We can change our physical condition by changing our energy field. This thinking brings the concept of mitochondrial correction principle. So in healing in general, one of the first steps that we should think of, it's repairing the mitochondrial as the first step. The integrity of mitochondrial membranes is critical to cell function and energy metabolism. And this membrane is the frontier between health and disease, cell survival and death. So several components of the system require routine replacement, and this needs to be facilitated with our diet or with supplementation. Here's a short guide. In terms of diet, we could think of paleo with organic, a paleo diet, Paleolithical diet, with organic vegetables, grass-fed meat, free-range poultry, wild-caught fish, nuts, berry, coconut, avocado oil. We had targeted supplementation, which we call mitochondrial enhancers, as CoQ10, alpha, acetyl-L-carnitine, alpha-lipoic acid, B-complex, magnesium, PQQ, resveratrol, phospholipids, omega-3s, arginine, NAD, creatine, melatonin, vitamin C, and phytomedicinals as ginseng, rhodiola, lucia, ashwagandha, shilajit. Therapies as hyperbaric oxygen, laser, IV vitamin C, acupuncture. I didn't put it there, but ozone can be another therapy. Lifestyle, exercise, intermittent fasting, stress reduction, rest. The importance of maintaining balance. There's a chemical principle that all systems search for equilibrium, which is subject to change in concentration, temperature, volume, etc., pressure. But the system tries to readjust. And the body is in a constant search for balance. But what the body needs, it needs to be provided the necessary factors. And what are the necessary factors? We obtained it by our diet. That's why our diet should be rich in nutrients, not in empty calories or artificial fats and processed food products. The healthy state is also dynamic. There's a concept of dynamic state of the body constituents, a continual release and uptake of substances by the cell, which is an open system. And this gives rise to a theory of Bruce Ames, which he called the Metabolic Triage. And let's see if I have it. Okay, the Metabolic Triage, it's that the human body prioritizes the use of vitamins and minerals when it's getting an insufficient amount of them to be able to keep functioning. So triad means deciding what functions to give it priority when faced with limited resources. And that paper that I mentioned there, the low micronutrient intake may accelerate degenerative diseases of aging to location of scarce micronutrient by triage. It's a paper that's going to become one of the most important papers ever published, together with the paper of orthomolecular psychiatry of Pauling in 1968. This is another very important paper. It's basically telling you that if you limit your nutrients, the body's going to take care, it's going to go in survival mood. So you're not going to be able to give enough energy to the immune system and neural system, and you're going to start suffering from these insufficiencies or deficiencies by having immune problems or neurological problems. Here's the concept. When faced with limited nutritional resources, the human body must decide which biological function to prioritize in order to give the organism, the species, the best chance to survive and reproduce. Under such limited scenario, the body will always direct nutrients toward short-term health survival capability. So most of the things are going to go to energy and away from regulation and repair processes that optimizes complex systems, health, and increases longevity. So immune and nervous system are the first to suffer. We talk about this concept in a paper that we published in the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine, which we call Metabolic Correction, a functional explanation of orthomolecular medicine. So, unifying the theory of the healthy state, energy balance. We have metabolic correction, which is really correcting metabolism of the enzymatic biochemical level. We have physiological modulation, which is mostly a hormonal level in a physiological term. We have mitochondrial correction, which is at the true smaller energy level. And, you know, we have various points of control to assure quality and effectiveness. That happens, in all subsystems and suprasystem. And all is influenced by energy. Metabolic correction is basically a fine-tuning of the cellular physiology to improve function. Therefore, to preserve health, prevent tissue damage, and revert disease. What it does, it provides the necessary cofactors in amount and form, the right molecule in the right time in the right place. It's an orthomolecular principle to replete the metabolic enzymes to enable them to accomplish their physiological function. It produces improvements in cellular biochemistry that helps the body achieve metabolic or physiological optimization. Here's a slide of what we call intermediate metabolism. And you know, what I want you to just take a look at is the amount of cofactors needed. In order for this metabolism to proceed, it needs all those three-letter cofactors: TPP, which is thiamine, B1, FAD, which is riboflavin, B2, NAD, which is nicotinamide or nicotine, which is niacin, which is B3, biotin, B12, folic acid, PLP, which is vitamin B6. It's not there, but alpha lipoic acid, magnesium. So you're going to need a bunch of cofactors. And the only way of obtaining this is in our diet or by supplementation. So when they tell you that if you eat a balanced diet, you have all the nutrients, think again. How many cells we have in our body? Trillions. How many enzymes each cells have? Hundreds, maybe thousands. So how many cofactors each enzyme needs? At least 4. So do you really need very little nutrients, that provides in a supposedly balanced diet? Definitely not, especially if we eat processed food. So the main idea here is that we need to eat a nutrient-dense diet. So the systems that are more complex are the immune system and the nervous system. And in order for us to really be able to have a balanced organism, we need our detox mechanism to be working well. So the immune system, you have cellular and humoral. The nerve system, you have nerve impulse and neurotransmitters. And detox, you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which require many reactions, many pathways, and many enzymes. So we're going to need many cofactors in order for this to be functioning in an optimal level. So cognitive function and cofactors, an intellectual process by which one becomes aware of, perceives, comprehends idea. It involves all aspects of perception, thinking, reasoning, and remembering. It's a very complex physiological process. So it requires many metabolic enzymes, many metabolic steps, many enzymes, many cofactors, receptors, and membrane interactions. So metabolic correction concept was developed by me and Dr. Miranda, that we worked together at the University of Puerto Rico. It explains how proper nutrition and scientific supplementation can overcome or reverse the disease state. It may help the body achieve physiological optimization. As I mentioned before, physiological modulation is the function fluctuation in response to changing environmental conditions, changes in physiology that influences metabolism due to specific molecules and or active principles. So plants contain a variety of physiological friendly molecules. That's why we think that physiological modulation is one of the mechanisms by which plants at different levels, by using friendly molecules that are similar to molecules that we have in our body, or by their specific energy component, the wavelengths that they bring because of the vitality in plants, because of their different wavelengths that are trapped in the cells of the plant per se. So you have botanical therapy, which you have an extremely wide variety of metabolic friendly molecules that are present in structure or chemical properties needed for a specific situation. That's why it's called adaptogen, because it may adapt, because the body will use the molecules that are necessary, that are present in that plant to correct or to balance or to modulate itself in a physiological manner. These molecules are in a resonance nature, but sometimes vibration, oscillation, that permit to facilitate facilitates either to give or take an electron to provide the necessary physiological balance. So that's what makes it an adaptogen, that it has, if you're very low in energy and you have a high vibration plant, it will pick up your energy. If you have too much energy and you have a lower vibration plant, it will lower your energy. So that may even help you against anxiety or something like that. So that's the adaptogen principle of plants. So you increase available energy or decrease total entropy. You have negative entropy in an open biological system by providing negative entropy. So you reach homeostasis and balance this way. Jose Ovalde is an engineer that created a systemic theory of medicine, systemic medicine. And it's a very interesting concept that we have adapted in order to explain physiological modulation with his systemic theory. Basically, it's a explanation utilizing physics on how to use energy in these systems. So the physiological changes can occur with hormone-like structures, resonance molecules that can be called adaptogens to keep order, organization, and communication that we mentioned before. What Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That will be it. That's, if you see behind me, I don't know if you can see it, but if you see my desk, it's very similar to the desk of Dr. Linus Pauling, all messed up. But his mind was very organized and balanced. But it wasn't negative entropy, but his desk was in pure entropy. And I'm available for any questions that you may have. No questions. It was so clear.
Can I raise a question? Hello.
Yes.
Yes, Doc, I just want to raise some questions, but there's such an interesting presentations. My first question is how we can actually enhance the conversions of ADP, adenosine diphosphate, to ATP in the ATP synthase. As you mentioned before, to get vital force, we have to enhance the energy from.
There's different principles. Let me tell you what the old cultures did. Old cultures, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, had the capacity to utilize energy for healing. And how did they did that in those old days? Well, they did basically two important things. One was meditation. And meditation, what it does, it really helps you concentrate better and focus your energy. The other thing that they did was, let me see. The other thing that they did was fasting. Fasting, what did fasting do? Fasting, what it did, it repaired the mitochondria. It let time for the mitochondria to be repaired, to autophagy to occur, for it to produce new mitochondria and restore the ones that may be a little bit damaged. So once you restore your mitochondria, you have the focus of the energy. That's the way the old cultures did to really enhance their mitochondrial function. Also, diet in those days were very pure, was very limited to natural things. So that really helped a lot too. So what I would tell you about is that we have to look at mitochondria as something more than just producing ATP. ATP, it is the chemical needed in order to have the energy. But what we have to do is make sure three things: enough hydration, enough cofactors, and also detoxification, you know, detoxification in terms of probably eating more vegetables, drinking more water, and at the same time doing some sort of fasting. It could be intermittent fasting, but it's a way of clearing up the mitochondria. So we have those three: diet, hydration, supplementation, and intermittent fasting.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Gonzalez. Could I ask a question, please?
Sure.
My name is Dr. Balje. This is absolutely fascinating. I can't produce the authorities right now, but I've read that certain molecules that are required for life, for example, the molecular structure of DHA and even the aromatic amino acids actually might be, the ring structure might be photon traps to trap energy for functions within the body, and that these molecules may not work very well if they did not actually trap photons from the sun. Do you know of anybody who might be doing research in these areas that perhaps you can give us names later, maybe by email?
Well, you know, there's one book that I would recommend, is a book by James Oshman. I think I have the book around here someplace. I think it's called Energy Medicine, but you could check it, James L. Oshman. And I think another book that I would recommend is The Fourth Phase of Water by Gerald Pollack.
Yeah, that's an amazing book.
Yeah, and I think those two books really kind of summarize a lot of the things that I mentioned here. That article by Ames, which I have in the presentation, is a very important one. The article by Pauling, it's the one that, you know, breaks the ice in you know, on all these concepts. And but you know, I think what I have done is utilize all this information and give it an energetic twist. And you know, there's some things that we already know, and there are some things that we're learning, and some things that we'll probably need to go back to the Chinese and Indian culture in order to really understand energy, because all of these people in the older days, they didn't know any of the physiology or chemistry or physics that we know nowadays, but they understood how to use energy. Look at how fascinating is the concept of the chakras, the concept of the meridians, the concept of acupuncture, the key. I mean, they knew energy. And even shamans in Brazil sometimes tell you, pick this plant in the morning, make a tea in the afternoon, because they know that these vibrations, these frequencies may change in different parts of the day, depending on the sunlight, depending on how the earth is turning. We don't know none of this. I mean, we could imagine stuff like this, but we don't know. And sometimes it's, you know, once you start looking into this, you really question sometimes what is really science. What is pseudoscience? Is pseudoscience really that bad? Or maybe pseudoscience is what we have to be learning. I mean, it's fascinating, but at the same time, energy, it's complicated. It's complicated because I think looking at it as information and trying to keep a balance in a system, or an open system like the body, it's very complicated. I mean, the mitochondria does an amazing job. And in the complexity of life, it's so much. I mean, right now, you know, in biology, when I was a starting student in the university, I always said that viruses are living things. They say they're not, but things that reproduce and are like, you know, they're some sort of opportunistic parasites. They may not have a large consciousness, but they have some consciousness because they know they have to reproduce. And we forget that they can communicate, they could exchange information, and that's intelligence. It's something can do that. It's to certain extent alive. You know, it's, what is the realm of being alive or not? Is the computer alive because it manages information too? So it has certain consciousness, but it doesn't have a consciousness as complicated as ours. So imagine how much energy it entails for us to do that. I remember one time, it was me, Dr. Miranda, and Dr. Riordan. We were traveling to his home, and he had a gate that opened with a controller, and the battery went bad, and Dr. Hugh had a very big head. Dr. Riordan was a large man. He was probably about 6'4", 6'5", and about probably 300 pounds or 200 something. So he was large, a large, big man, big head. So we said, Dr. Hugh, put the control on your head, because that's where the more energy is, and you will be able to open the gate. And when he did that, the gate opened, and we all started laughing. But so, I mean, you know, sometimes right now, if you tell me, if I'm a pseudoscientist, I think I'll be elated to hear that more than being, you know, offended. Because right now, for me, it's very difficult to really tell you what is science and what is pseudoscience. I think we should not try to scientificate energy. I think we should try to understand it, and whatever we can explain, let's explain it. But if we can't explain it, we should not say that it's not there or anything. We should approach energy with a very open mind and learn from our older cultures. I think that's the only way we could become real healers, because anybody can be a physician. You go to medical school, but to be a healer, it entails something else. It entails the understanding of these concepts and the complexity of the human being in trying to bring that human being back to balance, back to the healthy state. So I think it's a difference between a healer and a physician. What I wish is that all you physicians become healers, and that's the best way, because you'll be satisfied. I'm sure you'll be more satisfied in your practice if that becomes a reality. So science will not answer all the questions. I remember another thing that I learned from Dr. Riordan was that he mentioned, Michael, remember that medicine is 70% art and 30% science, and we should never forget that. And I think this is part of the art part. A little bit of science, but mostly art.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez.
Let me tell you, I'm fascinated with the concept of imposition of the hands and healing and energy. And that's something that everybody used to laugh at. But let me tell you that now, in that book of James Oschman, he mentioned that now there are instruments that are able to capture energy coming out of hands of healers. So it's measurable now. It's not just a concept that was in the air. It's something that can be measured. And as we get more sophisticated, things are capable of being measured. There's also a scientist, which has a weird name. I could probably send it to you by email later. Phil Pop, that had done a lot of work with the biofields. And I think his principles of learning about this, it's coming from the Chinese and the Indian culture, Ayurveda medicine and Chinese medicine, which really are based on energy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez. My next question was going to be whether you think that we will find energy systems in the body or energy currencies in the body which are not ATP dependent, but I think you probably already answered that in a way.
Oh, yes, I definitely think so. I think there's small currents, there's small molecules that I think ATP is the one that we have identified, but I'm sure there are others, and it's information things. And I think it has to do a lot with vibration, frequencies, especially from wavelengths from the sun. I think it's not only that it produces vitamin D, I think we are energy beings, and I think we need the sun.
I read somewhere that somebody very a lot wiser than some of us, who said that the maths doesn't add up, that if you look at all the ATP that we might produce in the mitochondria coming from food, it just doesn't add up to the amount of energy that we require to thrive. That the energy seems to be coming from somewhere else as well, and that's probably the sun, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. This has been so interesting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Dr. Gonzalez, can I check with you, what do you think about bioresonance for treatment and diagnosis of diseases?
Bio what? I'm sorry?
Bioresonance. You heard about the Rife machine or those
I don't
machines
know.
to use?
I heard the concept. I looked at it. I think it's very interesting, but I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
I think it's a possibility that, you know, I think it's one of the concepts that we need to learn more. But I think it's an important thing in order to maintain balance. To everything should be, everything has its own frequency and vibration, and we could capture that and repeat that and bring into a resonance that it's capable of maintaining balance. I think it's important. I don't know enough of how to do that, but I think you know, I skip that because if we have enough ordered energy, it will take care of that. But I don't know enough of it to really influence it. There have been some studies, I think, but I'm not aware of you know, of how specifically use it for a specific disease. I don't know enough about it.
How about the use of mobile phones, 5G? How about the 5G? How do you think about how does it affect this energy in the body? The 5G, the mobile phone, the Wi-Fi, all these? Yes.
I think it's going to bring some sort of energetic disorder. And I don't really know if we can protect ourselves well enough. I know, I remember Dr. Hugh was very interested in these different energies, which he called subtle energies. And he created like a Faraday cage with a lot of copper in it. And it really left out all these things. And you felt even different when you were there for at least 20 minutes. And we didn't have the 5Gs yet, imagine. So we did one experiment once that we put a cell phone on cells. And this cell phone, what it really did, it increased cell division in the cells. We didn't go long enough to see if there were, you know, changes in terms of the cell looking malignant. They just started dividing more. And it was like 20 times more division than cells that were not exposed to basic cell phones. And that was in the early 90s. So now, I mean, cell phones now are a little bit better, but with this 5G thing, they'll probably get worse. So there's a possibility of changing membrane potentials that may affect what we call the healthy balance needed to attain health. So I think it's a possibility of diminishing immune system. And when you see, even when these viruses, the viruses works in systems, in cities that are contaminated, not only by contamination of heavy metals and other things, but of electromagnetic contamination. So I think it's something that we have to take a serious look at.
The last one, protect ourselves. The last one, how do you think about earthing to improve our health, discharging the energy? Earthing, you know?
I don't know what you're doing.
Earthing is just like grounding, releasing the
grounding. Yeah. The Schumann resonances. Yeah. I think it's an important thing. I don't know enough about it, but I think it kind of puts you in, as you were mentioning, in resonance with the earth. And those frequencies, they know that they can increase relaxing neurotransmitters, and that's important. People have reduced cortisol just by doing grounding and stuff like that, increased serotonin and dopamine and things like that. So I think it's another thing that we have to take a look at. We have to get back to nature, definitely.
Thank you.
So I think I touched on kind of a sensitive spot in terms of energy, which I know that you guys are interested in many other aspects, and it's great. I think all these things are going to be more important as we understand a little bit more about quantum physics and a little bit more about quantum physics, which the concept is fairly new compared to Chinese medicine and Ayurveda medicine. But I think it's what we have done, it's really unite all these concepts of energy in terms of that the old cultures were in the right direction, and we probably have to go and visit them again and learn from them, because all these new concept of energy, what it's saying is that the old cultures were correct.
Dr. Gonzalez? Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes, I hear you.
Hi, thank you. Could I go out on the limb and ask you what you might personally be doing on a little bit away from the beaten track to keep your mitochondria going?
Well, I've been almost a year with intermittent fasting. I do it almost every day.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when I turned 55, I'm 59 now, I started feeling a little bit with less energy, like getting old, sort of. And it hit me suddenly. I don't know if it was, you know, I had a little bit of decrease in testosterone and stuff like that. And I don't know if that was the main reason, but I started feeling a little bit with less energy. And once I have been doing this for, I would tell you, like 3 months, my energy returned as when I was 30. And I have the energy again. I don't require even much sleep right now. I do that. I do other things. For example, I try to exercise mostly 5 times a week, at least half an hour. Different things, what I can do. I usually go to the gym. Right now with the lockdown, we're not able to go to the gym, but I run bicycle. I do push-ups home. I do a little bit of weightlifting. I do, you know, a little bit of hitting the bags, you know, hitting back like boxing, stuff like that. I play a little bit of basketball whenever I can. And that's things I try to eat well, although I do things I have to, you know, improve. I have to improve my sleep patterns, which are gonna, other things that are gonna kill me if I don't do it. And the other thing I have to, I've been eating late. I eat good stuff, but I eat too late. I can't be eating that late. What it does is basically intermittent fasting. Let's say I ate at 12 a.m. So I have to wait 16 hours. So it's gonna make me eat later, and then it's a cycle that can become, you know, a problem eventually. So I have to eat earlier and try to maintain my intermittent fasting and sleep more. Those 2 things I have to do. Other things that I've been trying, I've been studying photobiomodulation. I've been studying lasers and different aspects. I have used intravenous laser for different things. We're studying it for different diseases. I have a helmet that produces red light to increasing circulation on my brain and my head. I use it like 3 times a week for about 30 minutes. So I use all this technology. I've been also studying exosomes, stem cells, in order to try to repair, you know, arthritic joints and stuff like that. We're looking at also into cancer as information molecules, looking at exosomes, especially from early part, because what we want to do have its molecules that have enough information to give the cancer cells the information that they're lacking for differentiation. So we're looking into how can we provide that information to the cancer cells, and exosomes may be one of those ways, because you have exosomes from cancer cells, which will give you, you know, which really, you know, help cancer cells grow. But you have exosomes with other type of information that will provide the information necessary for differentiation. I think there's a lack of information and energy and differentiation. We have seen that there's cancer mostly as a metabolic disease, which is a concept that has been talked much by Dr. Tom Seyfried.
Yeah.
We also wrote a theory of cancer, which we call the bioenergetic theory of carcinogenesis, which is very interesting because I never heard of Dr. Seyfried before, and he never heard of me. And when I saw his book, I said, but this is my idea. But let me tell you one thing, he wrote it before I did, and I didn't know about it. But in any case, we came to the same conclusion coming from different angles. And it's very interesting. We published a paper together, which was the paper on mitochondrial correction. And he's a very nice guy, a very brilliant guy. And I think he's correct in his statements. He also has done some studies with Dom D'Agostino. Dom D'Agostino has used the ketogenic diet, hyperbaric oxygen, and vitamin C, reducing tumors. So it's really showing that cancer is mainly a metabolic disease. It always has a genetic component, but it's the genetic part comes after the metabolic derangement. The metabolic derangement first, and then come the genetic changes. So, but the genetic changes perpetuate the cancerous state, but that transformation occurs at the metabolic level. I'm sure of that, because you see mitochondria not non-functional. We publish a paper together with the Riordan Clinic with Dr. Nina Mikirova, showing that the levels of energy used by cancer cells and normal cells are similar, but from where the energy comes from in cancer cells has come totally from glycolysis, and in the normal cell it comes mainly from oxidative phosphorylation. And it seems that the mitochondria is not working well in the cancer cell. You have some mitochondrial dysfunction, but it's not something that we just have observed. Many people have observed that, and there have been papers on that. And there has been some confusion because sometimes it seems to be the mitochondria working, but it's really that the cell is using glutamine as a source for energy, and it looks like oxidative phosphorylation, but it's not. And that confusion has really been damaging for people to recognize cancer mainly as a metabolic disease.
The same ideas exist also in heart disease, that the mitochondria in the heart might not be functioning as well as they should. So heart muscles start to use glycolysis and then become producing a lot of lactic acid, and that causes.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the heart, what we've seen basically, one thing that helps the most, people always talk about fats, but the fats that are damaging are processed fats more than saturated fat. And the other thing is the combination of bad fats with simple sugars. I mean, that's damaging to the heart and to all diseases. The cancer is one. One of the things that we do, we try to keep a very low carbohydrate diet in patients in general. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer. I think carbohydrates, it's a real culprit in most of these diseases, especially, single processed carbohydrates. I think they're a huge problem. And they're easy to get. They last. They have a long shelf life, so it's very difficult to battle that. And I remember that in the 80s, you had these low-fat things, and then they added more carbohydrate than fat, and then the diseases just went up. They didn't go down. Heart disease, diabetes, and cancer went up, and that's where we started looking that maybe carbohydrates are problem. And that's one of the things we've seen in mitochondria. One of the most damaging things people think about fats. Yes, fats are damaging if they are unnatural processed fats, but their natural fats don't seem to be a problem. The problem is simple processed carbohydrates. That's what really damages the mitochondria, because it speeds up how things get into the mitochondria. It doesn't let it rest. So it goes on and on and on. And so it produces a lot of free radicals. And it's damaging because you don't give it a rest. The mitochondria cannot rest when you are in high carbohydrates. And you need the mitochondria to rest, because if not, it's going to get exhausted. You're going to have not enough components, doesn't have time to restore its membranes, to, if it's damaged, to produce the autophagy needed to repair and produce new mitochondria. So all these things are needed in a high energy ordered level. It's very important. And I remember that when I started studying Chinese medicine, one of the things that we lose as we get older is movement. That's why they have this Qigong exercises and stuff, because that's the way of maintaining movement. And movement is life, and movement is energy. So this, it makes a lot of sense.
On a similar sort of paradigm regarding what you mentioned about mitochondria needing enormous amounts of nutrients, and also, while we're talking about quantum energy and quantum medicine, I know there's a lot of research being done on thoughts, you know, just the person or the patient's thoughts affecting their health. The question I have is there any research that may show whether thoughts and the consequences of thoughts affecting health, overcoming nutritional limitations? So if somebody doesn't have nutrients, can thoughts improve function, for example?
You know, I think there's a possibility, but to be truthful, I think we need the nutrients, because we are in this physical dimension beings, and so we are complex, and we may need those thoughts, but we may need the nutrients in order for those thoughts to really make their way through. But let me tell you, there's some information there. All this started getting more serious when Harvard studying Harvard School of Medicine. They had let's see if I remember his name, David Benson. Benson started looking at meditation and how meditation can decrease stress hormones and can decrease disease, and he called it a relaxation response. And I think that started because he started measuring these things, and it started making sense, because people say, that thoughts and stuff, that's bullshit. That's what they used to say. But when you started measuring it and having a difference, they took it more seriously. There's been a physician called Larry Dossey that has really published a lot on this. I haven't heard from him. I don't know if he's still alive. But he's published Prayer as Medicine. He has a couple books. Bernie Siegel also treated young children with cancer with thoughts, increasing their immune system. So I think there's a possibility, but I think you really enhance this possibility if you take the right nutrients, because then you have, you know, the necessary tools in order for this to proceed in a easier, faster way.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I appreciate your time, and well, I'm you know, open. If you, I will be willing to send you the papers if necessary. I think Seldom has most of them, but
yes, Dr. Gonzalez. How can we boost our mitochondrial biogenesis? I mean, mitophagy. Can we use intermittent fasting just to boost?
I think intermittent fasting should be the first choice. Then you have the different cofactors. CoQ10, alpha lipoic acid, magnesium is very important. Acetylcarnitine, any form of the carnitines, B complex, and general vitamin C. I should tell you, I take these nutrients also. I supplement myself with all of these nutrients, but at the same time, I take a high dose multivitamin and mineral just to make sure. So I take my quantity of pills 3 times a day. Once I wake up, in the afternoon, and then at night. So I take I take probably about what, maybe 30, 40 pills a day.
Okay.
But it keeps me going. So I hydrate myself. I drink a lot of water, which I haven't done today. I usually have drinking water all day, because it's important in order for me to, you know, distribute all these nutrients and facilitate the work of the kidney.
Do you also take NMN?
You know, I started recently, but I'm not taking enough. I should take more, but it's expensive.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not easy to get also. It's becoming kind of hard to get, but I do take, I started taking it recently. Very impressive, the studies done in by Sinclair in Harvard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
But I think it works better with the other components, with CoQ10, magnesium, and I think it works better. So I'm not sure if I'm going to need that much quantity as he mentions, because since I use the other ones, I think they spare a little bit. But you know, I probably need to increase a little bit more. But I feel good. I mean, just intermittent fasting and the nutrient that I take make me feel pretty much energetic all day. And actually, I feel like 20-something years ago, which Sometimes I started in supplementing my wife because sometimes she can't keep up with me, and I need her to keep up with me. Just to, so she started on the supplementation. But yesterday I figured that I prepared her package, and she didn't took them yesterday. So I'm gonna make sure that she takes them today.
Okay. One last question. To get rid of cellular senescence, can we use autophagy?
Yes, but
Using intermittent fasting, I mean.
Yeah, I think intermittent fasting is very important, but you have to give it some time to really, feel the difference. It took me about 3 months that I started, but it was sudden, like something. I said, "Hey, I'm not tired. I should be tired by now." It's not a energy as when you take caffeine or something like that, but it's just a sustained type of energy.
Well,
Okay,
thank you.
We've got one more question from Dr. Maya. Dr. Maya?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the question has been asked, but only maybe Dr. Gonzalez, the cheaper version, does it work, the NAD+?
Could you repeat the question? I had some trouble hearing the last part.
Of NMN for the mitochondrial enhancement, the NAD.
NMN? You mentioned NMN?
I don't take NMN, but the NAD+.
NAD, okay. NAD, I used to take NAD. I think NMN, the body can use it in different ways, and I think NAD, the body can use it in less ways, but I think it's pretty effective also. It depends. What we have seen, it has worked for some people, very well, and for other people, it has not made much of a difference. If I could tell you a molecule that had made a difference, but we have a lot of experience with it, it's CoQ10.
Okay.
It's the one that we've seen that, does more of a difference. And sure, vitamin C, because I think vitamin C is a very important molecule. Vitamin C is important even for photosynthesis. So it's an indirect way of producing energy because it's an electron donor. So it really helps move electrons across the electron transport system. But you have to have enough of vitamin C in order to attain that. So you have to take many times the RDA for that. Yeah, at least I would say at least between 1,000 and 3,000 milligrams a day in order to, have this ergogenic effect of vitamin C. And you probably need the other components. I mean, it's, it's all these molecules working very well in a synergistic way. And sometimes if you take extra of them for a while, it might be okay, but eventually you may create insufficiency of others or that type of thing. The best thing, all these things, the best thing will be to have it in our diet and not have to supplement as much. But to be truthful, it's very difficult today to have all these nutrients in the quantity necessary to try to overcome aging and increase mitochondrial energy and energy in general. So, I try to eat well, but I also supplement heavily.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you for hearing me. I had you here for about an hour, a little bit more. So I'm gonna probably let you go.
Okay, Michael. Thank you very much.
Okay, you guys have a nice evening.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone. We'll meet.
Can I do the announcement for that coming Saturday? It's by Dr. Thomas Levy. The topic that he'll be talking on is magnesium, gateway to spectacular health, and that is on the 8th of August at 8 p.m. Malaysian time, 7 p.m. Jakarta time, Cambodian time.
I highly recommend that talk. Tom is a great speaker, great guy.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. See you guys.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining in.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Good night, Dato.
Bye-bye, Michael. Bye, Sati.
Bye, Dato.